Welcome to Gardening the Radio Way with Uncle Bert. This is a reproduction of a radio show that was broadcasted by the United States Department of Agriculture in 1926. Disclaimer: this is a historic, archived production. Do not assume content reflects current scientific knowledge, policies, or practices. This broadcast was aired on February 25, 1926.
Dear boys and girls of the radio audience, this is Uncle Bert, the garden expert of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, broadcasting garden questions and answers from about 30 stations. Thousands of letters are being written to the Department of Agriculture and the state agricultural colleges at this time of the year by boys and girls asking questions about gardening. The teaching of agriculture and nature study in the schools and the stories of what has been achieved by the members of the Boys and Girls Clubs and the garden clubs have created a great interest in gardening on the part of several million boys and girls throughout the country. Many of these boys and girls are preparing to have a garden of their own and to sell the products in order to get money for a vacation, for helping them through school, or for the purchase of something they want. It is perfectly natural for all real live wide-awake boys and girls to ask questions, and they keep right on asking until they get an answer. Usually they ask Dad first, and sometimes keep on asking until Dad says, "Keep still, you ask too many questions." The late Russell H. Conwell, in one of his lectures, said that when Dad makes this kind of a reply, it is a sure sign that he is cornered and does not know how to answer the questions. The other day, my young interrogation point had me backed into a corner with her questioning, and I attempted to escape in the usual manner when she came back at me with,
"But, Dad, how is a girl to learn if she does not ask questions?"
Now, if your Uncle Bert is to attempt to answer all of the gardening questions that are asked by the boys and girls of the radio audience, he will doubtless be cornered more than once, but then he has all the resources of the Department of Agriculture to help him out. In fairness to Uncle Bert, however, it should be stated that certain questions cannot be answered in the light of present-day knowledge, and these will be passed over. In this series of questions and answers on gardening, it is proposed to deal with problems of the vegetable garden, the growing of flowers, the production of strawberries and other small fruits, and also the care of tree fruits and grapes. No doubt, many of the boys and girls of the radio audience will want to ask questions, and these should be sent by mail to Uncle Bert, care of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington, D.C. All those who apply will be sent a card on which to register as members of the Boys and Girls Radio Garden Club. A copy of this talk and bulletins on gardening will be sent to all members free of charge. For you modern listeners tuning in the 2020s, any links to the information provided almost 100 years ago, if it is available, will be provided in the comments below. But here we are on the air with a long list of garden questions that Larry and Sam and all the other boys and girls of the radio audience have been asking in their letters to the department. Before starting to answer any of the questions, permit me to say a word about the Boys and Girls Club work. A seemingly trivial matter will often change the destiny and trend of a state and nation. For example, not so many years ago, the Mexican boll weevil made its way across the border into Texas and began to destroy the cotton crop of that state. The Exclusion Act utterly failed to keep this undesirable alien out of the United States. But the coming of the boll weevil into the South has caused the whole system of agriculture of the cotton growing section to be changed. One of the few good things that came out of the boll weevil invasion was the establishment of the Boys and Girls Clubs as a part of the extension work. To be exact, corn clubs were organized in Illinois, Iowa, and other states of the Corn Belt in 1899, and there was an exhibit of the results of this work at the World's Fair in St. Louis in 1904. School gardens were established much earlier, but it was not until about 1908 or 1909 that the corn clubs of the southern states were formed. In 1910, Jerry Moore of South Carolina made the whole country take notice by producing 228 3/4 bushels of corn on a measured acre, and this in a community where the average yield of corn was probably less than 20 bushels to the acre. Today, over 1/2 million boys and girls are enrolled in this club work, and it is estimated that there are 10 million boys and girls of club age, that is, from 10 to 18 years, who are not enrolled in the clubs, but who are eligible. The members of the Boys and Girls Clubs have addressed their questions to the club leaders, and these questions have been answered. As a result, thousands of the boys and girls who have belonged to the clubs have gone through college, and many of them are now employed as club leaders and are answering the questions asked by a younger set of club members. With the foregoing by way of introduction, we are now going to take up a few of the many garden questions that are being asked most frequently at this time of the year. The first question happens to be from a boy right here in Washington who wants to know how large a piece of land he should have in order to be successful in growing vegetables to sell in the neighborhood. A plot of ground 40 feet wide and 100 feet long, if properly managed, will grow all of the vegetables except potatoes required by a family of 5. In the terms of money value, a plot of this size will grow vegetables during a favorable season that are worth $50 to $60, or even a higher figure. The next question is, what crops should be planted in the small garden for the most profit? That will depend upon the local market, but lettuce, beets, carrots, spring or crunching onions, radishes, celery, tomatoes, and peppers are the crops that usually give the highest net returns from a small piece of ground. It is best, however, to grow a variety of vegetables in order to give your customers what they want. What kind of soil is best for growing vegetables? That depends upon the crops to be grown out. Generally speaking, any good well-drained soil will grow most of the vegetables provided it is well prepared. As a rule, light sandy loam soils are earliest, but clay loam soils often produce the heaviest yields. The kind of soil is not so important as the manner in which it is handled. What is the best location for a garden? For an early garden, a location which slopes a little to the south or southeast and gets the full benefit of the early morning sunshine is best. Land that is perfectly level is liable to flood during heavy rains, and for that reason a little slope is desirable. In sections where irrigation is necessary on account of lack of rainfall, the land should be level. In cold climates, a location on the south side of a grove of pines or other trees gives protection from the wind. A garden should never be located where it will be shaded by trees or buildings. Trees do the greatest harm as they not only shade the garden crops, but exhaust the soil of both fertility and moisture. The trees are the robbers, but we want to keep our trees, so we'll plant our gardens in some location where there are no trees. Here's a question from a girl in Brooklyn, New York, who says,
"We have a large yard in the rear of our house and would like to grow flowers or vegetables on it, but the ground has been tramped until it is very hard. What can we do to make the soil suitable for the garden?"
There are thousands of such yards, and the only method is to dig the soil and loosen it to a depth of 8 to 12 inches. Then add enough compost and fertilizer to make it mellow and rich enough to grow crops. If this yard could have been dug up or plowed last fall, and the lumps of earth exposed to freezing and thawing during the winter, the soil would be more easily worked this spring. The main point is to avoid working soils of this character when they are wet. That raises the question of how to tell when a soil is dry enough to be worked. If you were to ask this question of the experienced plowman, he would tell you to squeeze a handful of the soil in the palm of your hand, and if it makes a ball, it is too wet to work. But if it crumbles apart after being pressed together, it is dry enough to work. It depends somewhat on the kind of soil, but this test is a good one. One of our young correspondents in West Virginia wants to know what plants he should start in the house for planting in his garden. Tomatoes, cabbage, peppers, and lettuce are among the plants that can be started indoors to best advantage. All of these can be started in a shallow box of soil placed in a south window of the living room. Another young gardener wants to know where he can get the best garden seeds. Good, reliable seed dealers are located in almost every city and town of any size in the country, and these dealers issue seed catalogs. Get the catalog of one of these dealers and study it. As a rule, it is best to pick out the standard varieties and let the other fellow try out the novelties. No one dealer has all the best seeds, but many of the seedsmen specialize on certain kinds of seeds. A little girl met me on the street in Washington this morning, and she said,
Are you Uncle Bert?
I admitted that I was, and then she asked me this question.
What kind of flowers can I plant in a sunny backyard, the soil of which consists of clay, brickbats, gravel, cinders, scraps of old iron, old rags, and everything else under the sun?
Petunias. Single petunias was the answer. Loosen the topsoil 2 or 3 inches deep and sow seed of single petunias broadcast and rake it in. Do not plant the seed until the weather is nice and warm, and if the plants come too thickly in some places, thin them so that they will stand 2 or 3 inches apart. Single petunias will give a great variety of color and bloom practically all summer, and they are not particular what kind of soil they are planted on, just so they get plenty of sunshine and an occasional rain or watering. Next week, we will take up questions regarding the growing of early plants in the house, in the hotbed, and in cold frames. And remember, boys and girls of the radio audience, Uncle Bert is looking for real live questions on any phase of gardening. We have plenty of questions on hand that have been received in the past through correspondence, but prefer up-to-date ones, direct from the boys and girls who are thinking about gardening this spring. This concludes Uncle Bert's lecture number 1. Please be sure to tune in for our next integration of Gardening the Radio Way. Until next time, remember to giddy up and garden.
This production was researched and produced by BreakAway Empire LLC.